Hey guys, it's Hazel again, and I'm here to kind of weigh in on everything that's going on with Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. The latest development is there's a new statement out where Adam Waldman pretty much summarizes everything that happened. The bottom line is Amber Heard wrote an op-ed and published it in the Washington Post. And that being said, Johnny Depp has the right to sue anybody who defames him in writing. And like I said in the last video I made, Amber Heard wrote that damn thing, and regardless of what she might say or what somebody else might say, you know, all the excuses that she's made this whole time, it just doesn't play out. Because you know, the part of the NDA was they are not going to make any statements against each other in writing. And what does she do? I mean, she almost got in trouble for the letter she wrote in Porter magazine. You know, it was a letter she wrote to her silent sisters and everything like that. I mean, it was bad enough she came out with that stupid PSA video, you know, where she's like, oh, speak out, blah, blah, blah. You know that video. I'm not going to go through that whole thing. But seriously, it's not looking good for her. And so I was just going to point out little key things in this video. And one thing that sticks out to me and was mentioned, you know, by a bunch of people, you know, the whole thing where she titled it, I spoke out against sexual violence. I mean, that is a complete falsehood because, for one thing, he never did anything sexually violent to her. And she accused him of physical violence, you know, cited all kinds of things where he hit her, supposedly. But, you know, to call something sexual violence, I mean, that is going to get the Washington Post in trouble, too. And one of my favorite people that I follow on Twitter, I follow a lot of wonderful, awesome people who are so smart, and we've all gotten to know each other as well as we could, you know, regarding Johnny Depp and this whole thing. There's so many smart people who do their research and who post screenshots of that research. Bet White did a whole thread with, you know, about this statement, talking about it, and she pointed out that, you know, my God, I mean, you know, she put out sexual violence, and it wasn't even, you know, to title it something like that. And then that title appears several times in the statement that Adam Waldman made. You know, that's going to bring a lot of trouble. I mean, it's very damning. So what I'm saying here is that I hope that this completely finishes Amber Heard for good and all, because I, for one, am fed up with that woman. I want to give a shout out to everybody who pretty much inspired me to make these videos about Johnny Depp, speak out about Johnny Depp and this whole thing with abuse. It started with Jambernews. In 2016, there was a guy that was writing blogs, you know, about, you know, he actually was writing a blog about Amber and Johnny before they even got married. You know, I mean, it started way when people were still suspecting that they were dating, and nobody knew for sure. And then they were dating, and then they got married, and la 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 la. And so a lot of us met on Jambernews. We all did research. I mean, he was finding, you know, police reports on Amber Heard. You know, there were 2 felonies on her record that were hidden, but they were there. And that's another interesting thing. A lot of these things, like there are mugshots. Yeah, there is an actual mugshot of Amber Heard. It might actually have been taken when she was young, you know, when she was actually arrested for DUI or something, or some kind of misdemeanor where she was driving and had her license suspended. You know, but there are all kinds of things, and now they're all gone. I mean, why are they gone? Where she wrote this op-ed for the Washington Post titled, "I spoke out against sexual violence and felt our country's wrath that needs to change." So she accused Johnny of domestic violence, but she didn't mention him in the article. And of course, she's always used that excuse, and so has her lawyers. If she doesn't mention him, what's the big deal? But everybody knows who she's talking about. And she's talking about being a public figure and being publicly humiliated or some kind of thing, losing roles. And ironically, Johnny is the one that has suffered for this whole thing. He lost the role of Jack Sparrow, Captain Jack, as we know. And so I'm just going to go through this whole thing and just kind of pick little gems that stand out to me. The thing that really gets to me is the fact that, you know, Trinity Esparza and Alex Romero and Brandon Patterson. Brandon Patterson is the general manager, I think, of the penthouse building where Johnny and Amber lived, and Johnny owned those penthouses. So Amber actually went to them, and it almost sounded like, I don't know what she was trying to do, blackmail them, but she, you know, it almost sounded, it just sounded really, really messed up. She asked them to retract their statement where they said that they didn't see any marks on her face at all. They didn't, and they testified they didn't see any marks on her face, or they made a statement, you know, a public statement, and the fact that they didn't see any marks on her face, you know, that was obviously very damning to her, and she wanted them to retract that statement, publicly retract it. And she had this friend or connections with PeopleMagazine. Adam Waldman is perfect to be defending John. I mean, he doesn't miss a trick. He doesn't miss anything. You know, I like Laura Wasser and how she handled the divorce, but this guy is really kicking ass with regard to just calling it out. He said, Ms. Heard published her op-ed with actual malice. And the other thing is, Virginia is a state where they actually, you know, take on cases that are deliberately meant to hurt somebody. She deliberately set out to destroy Johnny Depp's career. She did all of this deliberately. She knew that Mr. Depp did not abuse her, and the domestic abuse allegations that she made against him in 2016 were false. She knew that the testimony and photographic, quote, evidence that she presented to the court and the sworn testimony provided by her two friends were false and perjurious. Perjurious. Ms. Heard knew that the truth was that she violently abused Mr. Depp, just as she violently abused her prior domestic partner, which led to her arrest and booking for domestic violence, as well as a night in jail and a mugshot. Ms. Heard revived her false allegations against Mr. Depp in the op-ed to generate positive publicity for herself and to promote her new movie Aquaman, which premiered across the United States and in Virginia only 3 days after the op-ed was first published. And what happened 4 days after that? Johnny lost the damn role in his most famous, iconic role of all the roles for him to lose is Captain Jack Sparrow. She planned that. You know, no wonder he's had enough. But Johnny Depp was actually the one who was abused by Amber. Let me just find it. But there was an incident when he was in Australia with her. His finger, there have been all kinds of conflicting stories about the finger. One had Amber Heard on the phone, and then he had some kind of fight with her and smashed his phone against the wall. And I guess the plastic of the phone cracked and cut his finger off. And the other outrageous thing was, like, his finger was partly cut off, and then he dipped it in some blue paint and painted the words Billy Bob Thornton, Easy Amber, you know, some kind of thing. And that wasn't even his handwriting, and that was proven false. Amber probably wrote that herself, whatever. But what really happened was Johnny brought up to Amber that they should have a post-nuptial agreement. So he did actually think about these things. People were making fun of him. Joe Rogan, other people were saying, oh my God, he didn't have a prenup. That's crazy. And yeah, whatever. I mean, he didn't have a prenup, but he was talking about a post-nuptial agreement. And she freaked out. She got mad, and that's why they had this argument. And then she throws a glass bottle at him. And I guess he was trying to duck and get out of the way, but the bottle made impact with his hand and sliced off a tip of his finger, and the finger had to be reattached. It shattered the bones of his finger. I mean, that's fucking crazy. You know, I mean, you love somebody that much to marry them and then to go freak out and throw a bottle at them. I mean, that's sociopathic, okay? I mean, Me Too people, will you wake up, please? This woman is not an activist. This woman is not a good person. This woman is a sociopath. She's playing you. I know a lot of you probably really have the best interest at heart of actual women who were abused, actual people who were abused. I know, not all of you are just blind followers of Amber Heard. It's not your fault. It's not Me Too's fault that Amber's doing this, but we just have to really constantly keep talking about this. Change, Amber's so fond of that phrase, change the conversation. Expand the conversation, I say. Expand it to include men who are falsely accused and men who are also seriously abused by women. Now that was a woman, a little woman. And women are, and Autumn on Venus has said this before, and it really is very brilliant. Feminism is about, women being equal with men and, being as strong as men. And working in the same places as men and not being treated like lesser-minded people or second-class citizens. And I grew up with that whole, for sure, I've always been about that. I want, to this day, we're still not getting paid the same amount of money. And I want, at some point, it's outrageous. I want us to get paid the same amount of money. But the fact is, there's certain things that we can't change, but it doesn't matter. It's like men are physically stronger, but that's not the excuse that we can keep using. Say, oh, women can't hurt men. Even Joe Rogan, I love his podcast, but he's got to get it through his head too. So does a lot of people. It's like, oh, come on, women can't actually hurt men. They're not physically strong enough to actually hurt men. And they'll go around calling men pussies who let themselves get beat up by, no, that has to change. This woman threw a glass bottle at Johnny Depp, and it severed off the tip of his finger. It shattered the bones. She threw it. She must have thrown it with such great force it did damage to him. The guy had to go to the hospital and get his finger reattached. Come on. Don't give me, oh, men are physically stronger. Don't give me, oh, men can't be victims. Women can't possibly be abusers. At this point, anybody who tries to use that argument is like, pity for you. But defendant Amber Heard isn't, let's see, I'm just going to jurisdiction and venue. This is interesting. Virginia. This court has specific personal jurisdiction over defendant under Virginia's long-arm statute, Virginia Code, some damn thing. I can't really read it right now. But the point is, as well as under the Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution, it brings up due process. This is important because, among other things, the causes of action in this complaint arise from the defendant transacting business in this Commonwealth and causing tortious injury by an act or omission in this Commonwealth. Moreover, exercising jurisdiction would not offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice because defendant could have, indeed should have, reasonably foreseen being hailed into a Virginia court to account for her false and defamatory op-ed, which was published in a newspaper that is printed in Springfield, Virginia. Virginia is very close to Washington, D.C., and the Washington Post, is printed in Springfield, Virginia. So, man, this woman just did not think. In an online edition of the newspaper that is created on a digital platform in Virginia and routed through servers in Virginia, in a newspaper that has wide circulation in Virginia, and even publishes a Virginia local edition in which the false and defamatory op-ed appeared, and in a newspaper that maintains 2 physical offices in Virginia. Further, defendant published the false and defamatory op-ed to promote her new movie, which was in Virginia theaters for viewing by Virginia audiences. Holy crap. So, venue is proper in this circuit under Virginia Code 8.01-262 because the causes of action asserted herein arose in this circuit. So here's the facts. Ms. Heard wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post that implies that she was a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Mr. Depp has appeared in more than 50 films over the last 3 decades. He has worldwide name recognition and has played a diverse array of iconic roles, including Edward Scissorhands, Willy Wonka, Captain Jack Sparrow, the Mad Hatter, Grindelwald, John Dillinger, and Whitey Bulger. His movies have grossed over $10 billion in the United States around the world. He has won the People's Choice Award 14 times. Mr. Depp married Ms. Heard on February 1st, 2015. The two met when Ms. Heard was cast in Mr. Depp's film, The Rum Diary. Unbeknownst to Mr. Depp, no later than 1 month after his marriage to Ms. Heard, she was spending time in a new relationship with Tesla and SpaceX founder Elon Musk. That's where I was getting to. Only 1 calendar month after Mr. Depp and Ms. Heard were married, while Mr. Depp was out of the country filming in March 2015, Eastern Columbia Building personnel testified that Ms. Heard received Musk late at night at Mr. Depp's penthouse. Specifically, Ms. Heard asked staff at the Eastern Columbia Building to give her, quote, friend Elon access to the building's parking garage and the penthouse elevator late at night. And they testified that they did so. Building staff would then see Ms. Heard's friend Elon leaving the building the next morning. Musk's first appearance in Mr. Depp's penthouse occurred shortly after Ms. Heard threw a vodka bottle at Mr. Depp in Australia when she learned that Mr. Depp wanted the couple to enter into a post-nuptial agreement concerning assets in their marriage. Ms. Heard's violently aimed projectile virtually severed Mr. Depp's middle finger on his right hand and shattered the bones. Mr. Depp's marriage to Ms. Heard came to an end in May 2016. After Mr. Depp indicated to Ms. Heard that he wanted to leave the marriage, Ms. Heard lured Mr. Depp to his penthouse to pick up his personal items. Interesting. Johnny wanted to leave. We were led to believe all along from the beginning that Amber was the one who filed for divorce, so Amber wanted to leave. And PeopleMagazine even published a stupid article, and I call it stupid because People has always been in bed with Amber Heard. So it said some kind of silly thing, where sources are quoted as saying Johnny never foresaw getting a divorce. I mean, this is just so nuts. But he wanted to leave her. He knew, he was finally done. So anyway, unaware that members of Mr. Depp's security team, including an 18-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, were mere feet away, Ms. Heard falsely began yelling, "Stop hitting me, Johnny." This was May 21st, 2016, the date that will live in infamy. she lured him to go get his stuff, and blah blah blah, and that's when he came over there. So then the interaction culminated with Ms. Heard making false allegations that Mr. Depp struck her with a cell phone, hit her, and destroyed the penthouse. There were multiple eyewitnesses to this hoax. Ms. Heard's friend then called the police, who arrived promptly. Upon their arrival, Ms. Heard refused to cooperate with police or make any claims that she had been injured or assaulted. And two domestic abuse trained police officers testified that after close inspection of Ms. Heard and the penthouses, they observed no injury to Ms. Heard or damage to the penthouses. But then, 6 days later, Ms. Heard presented herself to the world with a battered face as she publicly and falsely accused Mr. Depp of domestic violence and obtained a restraining order against him based on false testimony that she and her friends provided. By the way, incidentally, I'm actually reading from this statement as it's like right in front of me on my computer screen. I don't have a printer at present, so I can't actually print it out. But, just so you know, when I start reading from it, people recognize it. It is the statement that Adam Waldman wrote that is, you can find online within, I'll actually link the article where this statement is linked, and I'll also link the statement. And so anyway, just the fact that she lied like right to their faces. I mean, the other witness statement also has her right in front of his guards saying, "Oh, it's the last time you hit me, Johnny," and then she's pretending to cry. And how can she possibly think she can get away with this? The woman is insane, But Jesus Christ, I mean, how low can you go? I said on Twitter one time, I said, I wonder what would happen if she actually just dropped the whole thing, just admitted she lied, and I don't know, blamed it on some damn thing. But don't, it's just like with the dogs, jet lag. I don't remember ticking no on whether or not I was bringing animals into Australia, Your Honor. I don't remember. It must have been jet lag. And so, she kind of got off with the song. She had this big apology video where Johnny was sitting next to her. Do you guys remember how scared Johnny looked in that video? He looked terrified. I mean, he didn't even want to be there with her, but, there he was. Because he was, whatever. The guy loved her. The guy married her, He loved her. Whatever. It's just sad that these people are out there, these sick, twisted people. And it doesn't matter what gender they are, where they come from, doesn't matter any of it. It's just, twisted. I don't think I gave a shout to everybody. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that I'm thanking them. It's like Jambernews, Dr. Fuck You, L. Rose, aka Autumn on Venus. Who else? Incredibly Average, who I was talking about last time I did the video. The part 2 of that other one I made. And just all these people just inspired me to constantly just be on this. And it helps me to stay focused on my own recovery too, because, Johnny Depp does, appeal to a wide audience. But it's not just because he's a great actor, or he's a great musician, or he's good looking, or all that other stuff. It is that kind of goes along with it. But when you hear him talking, he's talking about a very real life. He is talking about his life, and Doug Stanhope did write that amazing article where he totally just called it out for what it is. And we all needed that article. We all needed Doug Stanhope or somebody to say something. And when I read that, I was like, the woman threatened to lie right to Johnny's face. She threatened to lie about him in every duplicitous way if he didn't agree to, I don't know, give her a whole bunch of money, give her the Range Rover, and he had already made that, situation, an overhaul, and he had gotten this, her Mustang, this beautiful car. He He got that all. It was so beautiful when it was all done, and then she wanted the Range Rover. It's just like, what a taker. I mean, but the woman, it's just not. I just don't see her winning. I don't see her winning this. But the thing that really got me is that she maliciously went after Johnny so much that he is literally not only asking for $50 million or no less than $50 million. Like I said before, I think it should be more, but he's also asking for punitive damages, and then any other award damages that the court sees fit to give, or to make sure that he gets. And it's just unbelievable, like how low she has no idea. She could actually do time in prison for friggin' perjury, and I'm actually hoping that happens. I mean, I'm sorry, the woman really needs to just be taken down and silent. And you want to talk about silencing, she's like, oh, I won't be silenced. Well, what really struck me funny is, like, she didn't deny anything. Adam Waldman does not miss a trick, I told you. She didn't deny that her allegations were false. She was talking about, oh, I won't be silenced, like her stupid lawyer. But literally, she never denied it. I mean, she's like, okay, you want to just keep talking, you're still going to be telling lies, and she didn't deny she was lying. She knows she was lying, and that's what this whole thing is about. She maliciously did this knowing that she was lying. It's just so obvious. So here we go. The sexual violence op-ed's central thesis was that Ms. Heard was a victim of domestic violence and faced personal and professional repercussions because she, quote, spoke up against, quote, sexual violence by a powerful man. Although Mr. Depp was never identified by name in the sexual violence op-ed, they keep mentioning sexual violence, and there's a reason for that. They want to make it clear that either that was like a deliberate typo or like something to make people think, oh, sexual violence, wait a minute, what's up with this? And maybe possibly wonder if, they were thinking all the worst things about Johnny Depp anyway. She just went for the jugular. The woman is a psycho. So, although Mr. Depp was never identified by name in the sexual violence op-ed, Ms. Heard makes clear, based on the foundation of the false accusations that she made against Mr. Depp in court filings and subsequently reiterated in the press for years, that she was talking about Mr. Depp and the domestic abuse allegations that she made against him in May 2016. Ms. Heard wrote, I spoke up against sexual violence and faced her culture's wrath. That has to change. Point 2. Then, 2 years ago, the precise time frame of her allegations against and divorce from Mr. Depp, I became a public figure representing domestic abuse, and I felt the full force of our culture's wrath for women who speak out. No, she didn't. She was embraced. Johnny felt the force of our culture's wrath for men who are accused. Again, gaslighting. Big weapon of the narcissist, as we know. I had the rare vantage point. This is a point number 3 in Amber Heard's op-ed thing, which is quoted in this statement. I had the rare vantage point of seeing, in real time, how institutions protect men accused of abuse. I write this as a woman who had to change my phone number weekly because I was getting death threats. For months, I rarely left my apartment, and when I did, I was pursued by camera drones and photographers on foot, on motorcycles, and in cars. Tabloid outlets that posted pictures of me spun them in a negative light. I felt as though I was on trial in the court of public opinion, and my life and livelihood depended on myriad judgments far beyond my control. As these statements reflect, the whole op-ed proceeds from the notion, presented as an unassailable truth, that Ms. Heard was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of Mr. Depp. She was not. Ms. Heard is not a victim of domestic violence, and Mr. Depp is not a perpetrator of domestic violence. And the centerpiece of Ms. Heard's attention-seeking hoax, her claim that Mr. Depp savagely injured her face by throwing her own iPhone at her from point-blank range as hard as he could, and then continued to beat her face with other appendages of his body. On the evening of May 21st, 2016, which caused her to have the battered face that she first presented to the court and the world on May 27, 2016, was a poorly executed lie that nevertheless has endured for nearly 3 years. The statements in her, quote, sexual violence op-ed that imply otherwise are false and defamatory. Ms. Heard was not a victim of domestic violence, she was a perpetrator. Long before Ms. Heard became a self-described public figure representing domestic abuse, based on her false domestic violence allegations against Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard was in an abusive relationship, but Ms. Heard was not the victim in that relationship. She was the abuser. And then it goes on to talk about Tasia Van Ree and how she, grabbed her arm, ripped the necklace off her neck, punched her arm, and she was arrested. She was booked for misdemeanor domestic violence. A mugshot was taken of her, and she spent the night in jail. The following day, the Seattle-based prosecutor declined to press charges, but only because both she and her domestic abuse victim were California residents who were merely passing through Washington state. So, since casting herself as a domestic abuse victim in her own fake reality show, like I said, Ms. Heard has attempted to blame misogyny and homophobia for her domestic violence arrest. Tasia, as you remember, Tasia came out and said, oh yeah, it was all homophobia, it was all misrepresented, and how much do you want to bet, 7 years or so had gone by and Heard and Amber somehow forced, either paid Tasia, offered to pay her, tried to blackmail, or tried to, bribe her by paying her in some kind of fashion or whatever to say all that. Don't tell me Tasia didn't accuse her, and don't tell me Tasia, denied it, because Amber spent the night in jail and they went to trial. I've had this discussion with people on Twitter, forever. The actual woman who arrested Amber in Washington was a lesbian. So there was no misogyny or homophobia involved. That was really, really obvious when she, I think, Amber must be the kind of narcissist that thinks that she can blatantly sit there and lie. It reminds me, there was a Star Trek Next Generation episode where, if anybody's watched that, the captain of the Enterprise, Captain Picard, was captured by, one of the enemy planets. It was an enemy ship, with this guy that was holding Picard hostage and starving him in this prison, and then he would every now and then sit and taunt him and mentally torture him. Literally, there were 4 lights behind him. There were 4 kind of dim lights, and he said to Picard, how many lights do you see? And Picard would say 4 lights. And then the guy said, no, there are actually 5 lights. And he would sit there and constantly tell Picard, even though the lights were right there in front of him, it was no, there are 5 lights. You have to listen to me. There are 5 lights. Now, I have done videos where I've talked about gaslighting, and somebody will sit there and look at you like, you're wrong, the sky is made of green cheese. You are crazy if you think otherwise. Listen to me. Your head is actually on your feet. And, the most obvious thing in the world is somehow not true or a lie. And I forget, was it Himmler or whatever, said if you tell a lie long enough, it becomes the truth. You can tell lies and tell them and tell them and tell them, and all of a sudden they start to feel like they're true, and it can drive people temporarily insane. It literally can. It's the worst kind of abuse ever, and people buy it, and then people start to follow these narcissists that will gaslight everybody, and they actually join forces with them, even though they may in the beginning know they're wrong, but it's like, oh well, everybody else is doing it. Oh, that's on the side, that's the side that's winning. It's like the Bob Dylan song, you just want to be on the side that's winning. It's such a great line. Anyway, but this woman is just, it's scary how sick and malicious this actual woman is. This particular narcissist. I mean, it's just frightening to me. I'm sorry. So, further down in the statement, Ms. Heard's domestic abuse allegations against Mr. Depp are false and have been refuted conclusively by police, neutral third-party witnesses, and 87 surveillance videos. Ms. Heard did not speak up against sexual violence as she claimed in her op-ed. She made false allegations of domestic abuse against Mr. Depp to execute her hoax. Bottom line, Amber Heard acted with actual malice. She knew what she was doing. And, it's funny because Trinity Esparza and I believe Alex Romero and others saw on the security surveillance tape Amber walking with her sister Whitney Heard and Raquel Pennington, and they were walking, I guess down the hallway or whatever, and Whitney pretended to punch Amber in the face. They were totally just making a joke about it, and then they all just burst out laughing. And Amber had no marks on her face. I mean, for days she would walk around with no marks on her face, and I guess thinking that she can get away with it. And of course all this was covered in the witness statement that I read in full in one of my last videos. So you have all that. However, and I'll link that again just so you have a refresher, the witness statement where Johnny basically listed all his witnesses. I mean, she had to know that she wasn't going to get away with it forever. And the fact was, she never denied that she beat him up. She never denied that she perjured herself by lying under oath. She never denied any of this. She's just, her lawyer was just talking about, oh, Amber won't be silenced, and this is just another attempt to silence Ms. Heard, yada, yada, yada. And like I said, Adam Waldman caught it and spoke about it and made a statement about it. So anyway, I'm just going to go over this section in Waldman's statement regarding actual malice. Ms. Heard acted with actual malice when she implied in her, quote, sexual violence op-ed that she was a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Ms. Heard acted with actual malice when she published her false and defamatory sexual violence op-ed and implied that she was a victim of domestic abuse at the hands of Mr. Depp. Ms. Heard knew that she was not the domestic abuse victim, but the domestic abuser. She knew. Ms. Heard knew that her domestic abuse allegations against Mr. Depp were false, and that she leveled them and enlisted her friends and sister to act as surrogates for her lies as part of an elaborate hoax to generate positive publicity for herself. Ms. Heard also knew that her elaborate hoax worked. As a result of her false allegations against Mr. Depp, Ms. Heard became a darling of the Me Too movement, was the first actress named a human rights champion of the United Nations Human Rights Office, was appointed ambassador on women's rights at the American Civil Liberties Union and was hired by L'Oréal Paris as its global spokesperson. Because of the past success that her false domestic abuse allegations against Mr. Depp had brought her, Ms. Heard revived the false allegations to promote her new movie. Aquaman, Ms. Heard's first leading role in a big-budget studio film, premiered in theaters across the United States and in Virginia on December 21st, 2019. Actually, that was a bit of a typo. It was 2018. But it doesn't really matter because the rest of this information is so vital, that a little typo can be forgiven. So the movie ended up making over $1 billion at the box office globally. Tellingly, just days before the premiere, excuse me, Heard published her sexual violence op-ed with its false implication that she was a domestic abuse victim at the hands of Mr. Depp on December 18th, 2018 in the Washington Post's online edition and on December 19th, 2018 in the Washington Post's hard copy edition. The op-ed in the Washington Post online edition was accompanied by a picture of Ms. Heard on the red carpet at Aquaman's Los Angeles premiere. Mr. Depp's reputation and career suffer as a result of Ms. Heard's false and defamatory op-ed. As a result of Ms. Heard's false domestic abuse allegations, Mr. Depp's reputation and career sustained immense damage. Ms. Heard, an actress herself, is well aware of the negative effect that false domestic abuse allegations have on Mr. Depp's career. Mr. Depp lost roles in movies because of the false allegations that Ms. Heard made against him. When Mr. Depp was cast in films, there were public outcries for his filmmakers to recast his roles. Mr. Depp endured the public scorn caused by Ms. Heard's false domestic abuse allegations for more than 2 years, but he was weathering the storm and had a successful film release in November 2018. In fact, that movie, Crimes of Grindelwald, was still playing on screens across Virginia when Ms. Heard revived the false domestic abuse allegations by publishing her sexual violence op-ed in the Washington Post. The reaction to Ms. Heard's false and defamatory op-ed was swift and severe. Just 2 days after the op-ed appeared, 2 days, not 4, because it's written here in the statement. 2 days after the op-ed appeared in the Washington Post online edition, Disney publicly announced that Mr. Depp would no longer be a part of the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Mr. Depp's turn as Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean films is one of Mr. Depp's most iconic roles and generated billions of dollars for Disney. Nevertheless, he was denied an opportunity to reprise that role immediately on the heels of Ms. Heard's false and defamatory op-ed. Again, I'm reading from this statement that Waldman wrote and paraphrasing as such. At any rate, Amber is one of the most horrific narcissists, like I said before. But the thing is, there are times when we just have to fight. There are times when we have to address it. Johnny Depp, for 3 years, tried to move on, tried to take the high road. However, he must have gotten permission. There are times when one can get permission, even though the NDA said, oh, it can't be waived in any fashion. Amber made the fatal to her career and to her cause, to her smear campaign, she made the fatal mistake of writing that op-ed. In Washington Post. She was trying to imitate, I'm guessing here, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who also wrote a letter to the editor about Kavanaugh and his rape of her when she was 15 years old in 1982. And Amber actually did an interview where she mentioned Christine Blasey Ford and cried about it to her reporter. Amber is very good to a degree at convincing people. However, she made so many mistakes, and I am praying that the judge and the jury find her guilty in all ways. See, this is the kind of thing where it's more than just smearing somebody. It's more than just, this is a woman who set out with malice to ruin a man. I mean, he said it in the GQ article. He goes to work for his kids. For his son Jack, who is in school right now. Jack does not have a job the way Lily Rose does. Jack is still a kid and wants to stay a kid and wants to be as normal as he possibly can be. The kid doesn't even have social media. Lily Rose is out there working, but, Johnny Depp, he still wants to support them. He's still their dad. And for Amber Heard to just maliciously do that, and I did mention this in another video, it wasn't just that she timed on May 27, 2016. It wasn't just that she timed it, which was bad enough, on the day that Alice Through the Looking Glass, the movie, came out. That movie was the sequel to the movie Alice in Wonderland, that generated a lot of money at the box office. I think it was a few $1 billion domestically. And she did that not only on that date when the movie was set to come out, but on Lily Rose Depp's birthday. Lily Rose, on the day of her birth, Johnny Depp told Charlie Rose and others in interviews that he was born anew. He actually felt alive after that day. It wasn't just that he was existing the way he, stated that he felt pretty much all his life. I mean, that day, Amber just went, like I said, for the jugular. So what I am saying, we've talked a lot about how evil she is, but the fact is Johnny Depp has a powerful strength that is needed to fight that kind of narcissist in court, for defamation and damages. The full jury. He's asking for a jury. Now that is telling. It's just, and ironically, Amber tried to do the same thing to Doug Stanhope by asking for a full jury. And then she dropped that lawsuit. Good. But Johnny's going forward, and he's calling out the truth. Calling out the lies and pointing out the truth. And God bless Johnny Depp. He is definitely an inspiration for all of us who have suffered narcissistic abuse. And he has suffered some of the worst kind of narcissistic abuse out there. At any rate. So thank you for listening. I will be back with more. Namaste. And keep truth alive.